Hi, I'm Kieren.
And I'm Riku.
Welcome to Artificially Ever After.
Short stuff.
Okay, what is AGI, Riku? You're going to tee us off?
So AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. And it's actually been more Googled than the words the cure for cancer, world peace, nuclear fusion, and the ozone layer.
Wow.
So,
is that in the past sort of year or two, or probably in recent times?
Yeah, exactly. Since 2022, which is
Wow.
when ChatGPT came out, it's now overtaken those other trends.
So it's in people's minds.
Yeah, exactly. Until then, stuff like the cure for cancer, world peace were at quite a constant rate, pretty well Googled. But now AGI is just completely taken over.
Wow.
And we're doing this episode because we hear the words AGI a lot in the media. And we think what's happened is the acronym itself has replaced the meaning of each word that the letters represent. So in this short stuff, we'll demystify what the words actually mean. We'll navigate all the fuss amongst the experts so you don't have to. And we'll touch on why you should keep informed on the progress of AGI.
Why it matters, yeah.
So we'll start off with the definitions of AGI. And remember that we're talking about artificial general intelligence. So in a way, I'm curious whether these are definitions of general intelligence and whether how much the A actually matters. And another key insight I want to think about is if we're going to talk about a human general intelligence, when we read these off, I want you to think about whether you would qualify under this definition.
Yeah. I think crucially as well, what we're going to do now is reel off a few different examples, because the important point is that there's no real consensus with what AGI is, despite everyone using the same acronym for it. The definitions are many. So one kind of very encompassing one that we see coming up a lot is the ability to perform all of the kind of cognitive tasks that humans can do. So all these things that we can think and reason about and then kind of complete a specific task. And obviously we'll break down what some of those tasks could be. But it's one system basically doing anything that a human could do. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, who have built ChatGPT, says it's a substitute for the median employee, so the average employee, but not able to do any set of tasks that you'd happily let someone do fully remotely and on their own. So I think this is crucially hinting at what we're going to talk about later, which is why it's important, which is that a lot of these tech companies developing AI now, defining it based on a threshold of how many jobs it can perform in the workplace. So not just kind of cognitive tasks in general, but tasks which have kind of economic value.
I like Sam's answer, but I also don't, because I like how, as you say, it's relating to the workplace, because practically that's kind of what matters, right? But saying, a substitute for the median employee and saying things like, stuff that you would not necessarily trust, complex tasks that you give completely remotely, it's still not a clear answer. So I think, again, as you mentioned earlier, there's no real clear definition for AGI.
And also, I mean, this probably taken out of context, that does sound quite sort of objectifying almost of just the
median human.
The tool, the median human, and then the kind of tool to achieving those goals is just being a bit of an arbitrary thing that can be swapped out. So that is slightly concerning there. But the last definition as well, or maybe kind of feature, is that it can learn and adapt to new situations. So not just this static AI that we've seen historically, which is where it would only get new capabilities if you completely retrain it, rebuild it from scratch and release that, but maybe on the fly it can adapt and gain new skills as it sees more information.
Yeah, so this is interesting because, the first one system that can do anything a human can do. I'm not a general intelligence then, because there's so many things anyone can do that I can't do.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe Sam's one, if I am the median person in a room, so, there's 100 people, you rank them best to worst, and you pick the 50th person. That is the median individual.
But I think just to really quickly go on a more general note, which is why maybe it's being so Googled and why people are thinking of this term more and more now, is there are so many things that I can go and ask ChatGPT about now on all different topics that it can respond most of the time with correct answers that are very detailed, very descriptive, that you can actually act upon on topics that I don't know anything about. So its scope and its kind of generalness is getting way wider than we previously would have thought. So I think this is why we're now starting to question whether some of the AIs that we have today are getting close to that.
Yeah, Yeah, it's really interesting to say, like in a way it's already more general than our knowledge bases. But
so on that point, how do we actually evaluate whether we have it on a technical level?
Well, I think that's a really good way to transition, because we have to separate what kind of tasks we're talking about, right? Like, as we said, maybe it's one system that can do anything a human can do. Well, how about making me a cup of coffee? How about doing my dishes?
ChatGPT can't do that, yeah.
Yeah, making some IKEA, some furniture for you. So I think in these physical manipulation tasks, where you need an embodied AI, something in a robot or something, we're nowhere near AGI if you're going to measure the tasks that are physical. But,
and if you're then measuring that by sort of jobs that can be replaced, I guess, even if these chatbots can fully describe how you should go and do that physical task, if they can't execute it and actually do the thing that the humans needed for, then we're not at risk of sort of job displacement and that being a replacement there. So
exactly. So, in terms of physical evaluations, maybe when, it's not really doing very well on those tasks, there are some benchmark data sets. So you'll see these big companies like OpenAI, Google, that they evaluate their large language models on common reasoning tasks. So there'll be questions, someone has a certain number of apples, and those kind of questions that
problem solving.
Require a bit of reasoning. They're using those, so it's just accuracy. So a lot of them are maths based, because you need like a yes or you need a ground truth, right? Yeah. Some people talk about capabilities. So I know Mustafa Suleyman, I know you're a big fan. He talks a lot about artificial capable intelligence. So
he's the CEO of Microsoft AI, isn't he? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He talks about can it negotiate a great holiday for you? So can you just give your LLM a task and it will I want the best holiday, and it sort of calls all the people, negotiates it. You come back to your computer and it's all done. But maybe most famously is the imitation game. So I think this is the most famous test for AGI.
Also known as the Turing test.
The Turing test, from Alan Turing.
Who invented the test,
and originally, imagine you're at a computer and you're in a chatbot, and they're on the other side of a kind of a screen, so you can't see who's on the other end of the table.
Room,
in the other room, there's a human replying to you, but there's also an AI chatbot replying to you. And you're chatting away, and you have to know when the human's talking to you and when the AI is talking to you. Yeah. And if there comes to a point where you have no idea who's replying to you, then it's an AGI. That's kind of the test. So
you failed the test if you can't tell. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all about imitating humans, which again is an interesting definition of intelligence. But I think with LLMs now, AI has already passed the text Turing test. We're seeing now AI can generate audio, so it will very soon, if it hasn't already, pass the audio Turing test. We've seen video generation, so it's going to pass the Zoom meeting Turing test. And I thought an abstract one maybe is the art Turing test. So we've seen, I think it was in Colorado State, I think it was 2021 or so, but an AI won a state competition of art, and the judges didn't know it was AI generated. So in a way, that's a pass of the Turing test. So
and I think it's slightly concerning, right? Because for decades, the Turing test has held true, and that's still been the sort of benchmark for whether we have very capable AI. For so many years, even when we had chatbots and AI that could produce text, it was not convincing enough to ever think it was a human. People have now very nonchalantly kind of dismissed the Turing test and said, oh, we've kind of gone past that now, and that most of these chatbots, at least just on the text form, could to a degree convince you it's a human. I think that's very concerning. Like, I think, to just move past that and go to the next benchmark or test, I think we need to slow down and think really long and hard about what it means that test in its general sense is close to, if not already being passed. We're going to be discussing that in this episode. We've got other episodes for that, but just wanted to say that even though we may have surpassed that test, does not belittle what it means on a societal level. Yeah,
exactly. And with the art example, I think it's a good example of showing that the AI can replicate human art pretty well, but I think we can all agree that it's not feeling the passion or the emotions that a human feels as they're doing that task, and it's really just getting the output. So you'll notice a theme here. So what are the definitions of AGI? They're always task related, and how are we evaluating AGI? It's always the outputs of tasks, and it's only the ends, not really the means that matter. And I think this is actually exactly where we want to talk about what the current definitions of AGI are missing and why it's so confusing trying to navigate all these headlines. And you see a lot, is AGI here? Or when will it be here? I see so many interviews with the top AI experts getting asked, when's your prediction of AGI coming? And there's a big reason why no one agrees. And that is because it's being portrayed as a black or white problem. It's it's as if there's an event, a day when AGI is here. And in a way that could be possible, but annoyingly, I would say we shouldn't ask, if AGI is here. We should say, how general is the AI? It's not, is it a general intelligence? How general is its intelligence?
It's like, how AGI is it?
How AGI is it? Exactly. So if you're going to, I think a little analogy is if you're, say you've gone to loads of countries, 50 countries, but you spent 2 minutes in each one. Are you well traveled? Or let's say you've been to 5 countries, but you lived in each one for 5 years. Who's more well traveled? And I think that's kind of the game we're playing here. It's we shouldn't ask, is it an AGI? Because you might have a different definition of how well you should complete each task. So that's the key thing we want to demystify in this episode, is ask how and not is. And I know you don't want this grey definition, but we're literally defining general intelligence. So we need to accept the nuanced answer. But I think, Kieren, you had a nice practical definition. So do you want to...
Yeah, which again slightly taps into what Sam Altman was talking about there, and these other companies, is the sort of percentage of jobs which can be replaced by that technology, which is a very scary definition to have, to even be thinking about that currently. But once that number hits 100%, I think everyone would agree that we've got AGI. But even before that, maybe we could set a much smaller threshold for that percentage where, we need to start thinking about the implications and classifying it as AGI if it can even take, 5% of jobs, let's say, which I think from the trends that we're seeing and what we're starting to hear coming out of these tech companies may be quite close. I mean, we're going to have an episode coming up soon about how close, even though we just said that it's more about how AGI is the current AI, but we're going to be kind of discussing about where we think we currently are on that in a future episode. But I think that's the main reason why we're trying to emphasize that you need to stay informed about this, and why it's important to, maybe not just dismiss it as something as a concern for the future, but think about AGI now, and why it's an important aspect about the world of AI is that job displacement is becoming a very real thing with this technology. And this year in particular, we're going to be seeing new capabilities of AI that mean that it can actually complete more tasks rather than just sort of describing them, which is going to start meaning it taps into that kind of area of job displacement. So if there's one reason to stay informed about this, it's to understand kind of what this technology is doing, all the different areas it's kind of encroaching. You see now with these kind of, you can ring up like helplines and call centers, and even now that some of those are kind of language models that are chatting back to you. So it is definitely coming into our lives very quickly. And even with some of the tech companies saying that they're going to replace kind of mid-level computer programmers with this tech, it's definitely close to replacing jobs. So
yeah, exactly. So I think a big reason why you should stay informed is maybe in 2022, general intelligences like the LLMs we see were on their own websites. They were kind of locked in a little corner of the internet. But now, as you say, they're literally replacing coders, people on the phone.
Going through the internet, browsing and things like that. Any other points from you?
Well, I wanted to end on a positive note, because I think it's
that's a good idea.
Kind of doom and gloom, isn't it? It's this thing that's encroaching and maybe casting a shadow over all of humanity. But one really nice thing about learning about AI and AGI is that you can understand what makes you uniquely human. So as we mentioned, they're trained just on outputs, and by learning what AI can and can't do and the nuances and how it completes its tasks almost reveals a sense of purpose in how humans complete tasks, right? I love the idea that the best musician isn't the one that can play like Beethoven the fastest. It's not just about getting things done. It's about, the experience as you play that song. And I think that's a lesson that we can take from AGI is appreciating what it gives humans meaning and when they do things.
And I think we're bound to see in the coming years and decades a complete redistribution of what is valued in the kind of economy and the job market, from what's historically been valued, like banking or things that have a lot of analytics. Maybe we're going to see a big shift in the kind of value system within our society and economy. Cool. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.